All right. What's up, Matthew? I just saw you a couple days ago, it seems, but we are back for a Monday night edition of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show, another pop-up show. We'll see if some people come in. I'm sure they'll crawl in eventually,
It's the
unless they're
Seeds and
watching the Bin
Stems
Pod.
crowd, right?
The Seeds and Stems crowd. Yeah, these people can't get enough Sabres talk. But I'll tell you what, man. We're back. The Sabres are back. We had a little bit of a break. You and I were together Friday. But no, we'll get some people in here. I think I wanted to get together again and just kind of follow up on the discussion that we had on Friday. We knocked the rust off a little bit on Friday, and then now it's real. Sabres have been back to practice for a couple days. You've been down at the arena. I think it'd be good to just kind of talk a little bit more, maybe, because we were speculating a lot when we were together on Friday. I think we kind of have some answers now for what the lineup's going to look like when the Sabres take the ice tomorrow night against Dallas. So I think it's a good opportunity to get this thing going. Just a quick hit tonight. I won't keep you for an hour and a half or whatever, maybe even not an hour. We'll see how it goes. But for those that are watching this live, or if you're watching it after, if you could please like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow the Baker Fairburn Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, leave a 5-star review. And by the way, for those on YouTube, this would have been a great opportunity tonight. Hit that notification bell, so then when we go live. Matthew and I have a tendency to just pop up randomly. It's not on purpose, just how it happens. We will change eventually. We will change our ways. No guarantees,
Maybe.
But I'm pretty sure at some point, it would be better for both of our schedules if we just kind of blocked something off on the calendar. But nevertheless, we do like to keep you guessing as well. So hit that notification bell so you'll get a notification on your phone or your computer when we go live. So Matthew, I'm going to cue it up again. I did it on Friday, but just to level set everything for the discussion tonight. Sabres coming back from the All-Star break with a record of 22, 23, and 4 for 48 points, or 10 points back in the final wild card spot. I didn't check that. I kind of carried that over from Friday, but I don't think the standings have changed. But either way, wanted to do just a kind of quick pre-scout of the schedule to kind of launch us into the next month or so of action, because the Sabres are going to ease their way in. Back coming off the All-Star break tomorrow, Tuesday night, against Central Division stalwart Dallas, a top 5 team in the league. And last March, if you recall, Dallas hung 10 goals on Eric Comrie, 10-4 stomping that the Stars handed to the Sabres there. So we will see if there's a little redemption on the mind of the Sabres. We'll see. Then they have a 3-day break. So they come in, they play a game, then they're off for 3 days, and they're back in action Saturday afternoon against a team that is in a dogfight in the Western Conference playoffs, and that's the St. Louis Blues. The Blues entered the All-Star break at 6-3-1. They have a lot to play for. So, tough game with Dallas coming up. And then, St. Louis, obviously, I think the Sabres have had some success in recent years against St. Louis, but they're playing pretty well of late. We'll see if they carry that good play coming back in after the All-Star break. And then just a real quick wrap up, kind of the future view here of the schedule. So the Sabres going to be off for 2 days after that Saturday afternoon contest against St. Louis. And then they begin an 11 games in 20 days stretch. So they basically will play every other day between February 13th and March 3rd. So you and I are going to be busy, because if we've been doing this cadence of maybe 1 podcast a week, we might want to crank it up to, 2, maybe even 3, because there's going to be a lot of action to talk about. And we want to stay current. The one thing that I notice about that schedule, when they're just have that crazy, they're basically playing every other day for a couple weeks straight, going to need 2 goalies. You're not going to play Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen in every game. But just to kind of wrap that up, because it is a 4-game homestand, okay? Dallas, St. Louis, then they have LA and Florida at home, and then they're going to make a trip out to Minnesota as they begin that journey of every other day playing games. So, Matthew, I threw a lot at you there, but you've been down at the rink, and obviously there were some developments there on the injury front that I think we're probably going to get into, because we talked last time about Jack Quinn's injury, but now there's another one, and kind of a familiar name that seems to pop up on these injury lists. What are you feeling, and what are you seeing down there, and what do you want to update the people on from your first 2 days back at practice?
Yeah, the big news was Mattias Samuelsson out for the season. He's having surgery on an upper body injury that happened against the Ducks. So he had already missed some time. He'd been banged up. This was a new injury, though, that happened against the Ducks, and he's going to be shut down for the year. So pretty significant blow. It has not been Mattias Samuelsson's best season this season. Last year, the big talking point was their record with and without Mattias Samuelsson, which was probably more of a referendum on the lack of depth they had on the blue line. This year, I think they're better prepared to handle this loss. We already talked, Jack Quinn is out for 8 weeks. Now you have those two players. And to me, it kind of starts a conversation. We can talk about how they backfill these spots and how they shuffle the lineup around for these games that may or may not matter if they can't start winning and stringing together some wins. But to me, it almost springboards into a conversation, and it got me thinking, are injuries now going to be sort of the excuse, right? That you hang your hat on and say, well, had injuries not happened, the season would have gone differently. And they're going to add, by my math, 50 plus man games lost between Samuelsson and Quinn with these injuries just down the stretch, with Samuelsson missing the final 33 games of the year and Quinn missing probably at least 20 games, somewhere between 17 and 22 games, depending on, when in that time frame he comes back. But to this point in the season, they're about middle of the pack in man games lost. And NHL Injury Viz does some, really great work keeping track of all this stuff. They're middle of the pack in man games lost, middle of the pack in average cap hit lost, middle of the pack in WAR lost, wins above replacement. In terms of the number of guys that are missing, the price tag of the players missing, and the quality based on, advanced stats of the players they're missing, it's all pretty average. There's teams that are less fortunate, teams that are more fortunate. Last year, the Sabres were super lucky with injuries. Really didn't have a lot of guys missing time. And that's where I think it feels like they're having especially bad luck this year. But it's really just sort of regressed to the mean. They've come back to be what other teams go through. And I think they've shown that they either... we've had this conversation a little bit on the show, but the reason I don't view it as a super valid excuse is because it feels like either A, they didn't build the roster to withstand injury, or B, they haven't made the necessary adjustments, whether it's players or coaches, to work around the injuries. Whether it's Tage Thompson misses 3 weeks, Alex Tuck missed 7 games at one point and has battled through some other injuries. Jeff Skinner got hurt. So these are significant players that missed more time than they missed at any point last season. But it feels like it's not quite an excuse. These, especially the two latest ones, it's convenient to say, well, really good play, promising young players get hurt and it's that kind of season. But to this point, they've been right around league average in terms of injury luck. And that, let's not forget where they are now, right? 10 points back, like you said, of a wild card spot. One of the more disappointing teams in hockey, I think, to this point in the season, and have gotten there with league average injury luck. But
we've already identified. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, and that's a big hole to fill when you look at it. I was looking at his numbers, not his like deep dive into his, advanced numbers itself, but he's going to finish the season now. He's only played 150 career NHL games. It seems like he's been around a lot more than 150 games, but it just speaks to how often he gets injured if you think about it. But he's been averaging 20 minutes and 46 seconds time on ice in his NHL career. So from the time he was very young until now, and he's still pretty young, he has 247 block shots in those 150 games. I think you have the answer for some of the reasons why he might be getting dinged up. He's not like one of these guys that's overly physical. He's out there, he's a physical player because he's a territorial defenseman. He covers a lot of ground. He's big. He can swallow up guys, but he's not out there blowing guys up. He gets dinged up by the self-sacrifice. My point in just kind of looking at these numbers, because he was averaging 2 block shots per game this season. It's a big hole to fill. And so it's going to be interesting. We saw now 2 sets of defensive pairs at practice too, right? To kind of how they're going to overcome the Samuelsson injury. Because I want to get back to the injury stuff. let's talk about Samuelsson a little bit, because I think there's more to it than the stats say. We'll get to that because I don't want to throw two things at you at once. But with Samuelsson, what are you seeing in practice, and how the Sabres are going to assemble their D to go to battle tomorrow against Dallas?
So it looks like it'll be Rasmus Dahlin with Henry Jokiharju, a pretty familiar pair, one that I think has been successful. Owen Power with Connor Clifton, which I'm interested to see more of. And then Ryan Johnson with Eric Johnson. And it looked a little different on Sunday, only I think because Eric Johnson still had not been formally cleared. But that would leave Jacob Bryson as your extra. And a couple of things I like about this. One is that it's lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty. And they have not done that enough this season. It seems simple, but in talking to a few guys about it, it's especially Clifton and Eric Johnson, because they were the two I think impacted most by it because they were playing together. I don't know that it was the best move for this particular set of defensemen, all getting used to playing with one another, and then some guys getting used to, having to play offhand. And I recognize that the personnel dictated it to an extent, but this is an opportunity. This is the type of season where you're going to have to look at a lot of this stuff as opportunity. We talked on Friday about how now they get to evaluate Zach Benson in a consistent top 6 role with some guys that could be, they're going to be around. They're potential.
I'm excited to watch that.
Right?
Yeah.
That could be a line going forward. I know everybody has fallen in love with the kid line of Peterka, Cousins, and Quinn, and it's a great line. You know what you have there, but maybe there's a little something better, and maybe that allows you to move Quinn somewhere else. It gives you some options. So you get to evaluate that. Now you get to evaluate some different defensive pairs without Mattias Samuelsson, and they had been somewhat hesitant to push Mattias Samuelsson down to the third pair, but it almost seemed like that worked out best when they did, and they had their best balance on defense when they did that, when he was with Clifton at times.
It was like a threat, right? It was like they did it as like a little threat.
But it never actually materialized. And they sort of leaned on Dahlin and Samuelsson a lot and didn't feel like they had the same magic that they had last year. So I'm interested to see Clifton with Power, mostly, because I don't feel like Clifton has actually gotten the chance. The whole idea was they signed him to be more than he could be in Boston, right? And mostly he's just been what he's been in Boston, role-wise. They've just given him those third pair minutes. They've moved, like I said, they've switched him to the left side, which really didn't work out. They've switched up his defensive partners all over the place. So now he gets a chance to play consistently with a guy who could use an older, steadier hand. I think they could both use one another a little bit at this point in their careers. And, Ryan Johnson with it. I think Ryan Johnson's been good with everybody he plays with. I think probably the part about this that I'm most interested to see is it's not a bigger role for Ryan Johnson necessarily, but I think everybody gets a little bit more from 100%. A minute standpoint, because Samuelsson's a minute hog, right? He eats minutes, and now the sheet gets a little bit more balanced, and you get to see Ryan Johnson hold up to a slightly bigger workload. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces, but the hope, I think, would be that they could stick with something for a while, because those guys on the back end have been moved around a lot this year.
Ryan Johnson is almost like the defenseman version of Zach Benson. Young player, rookie, doesn't matter where you put him. He slides in, efficient, competent, tends to make his partner, or in the case of Benson, line mates better. So
the two pleasant surprises of the season, right? The two guys who, when I asked Don Granato today about Ryan Johnson, he mentioned they thought he was going to be in the AHL this season, like everybody else. And then he came up and he earned it. Same with Zach Benson. And, part of it is you wish maybe somebody else would have earned the roles, but part of it is these guys are good, and they're the pleasant surprises, I think, and the good, feel-good storylines of the year for the Sabres in a season where there aren't many.
Now, what are you seeing? So back to the forwards real quick. So it looked like yesterday, so for that first practice back, so that would have been on Sunday, right? It looks like they had Robinson, Krebs, Olofsson, and Gergensons was rotating in Did they have that same type of look today, or do you have a prediction of who the odd man out is going to be there? Is it going to be Robinson out? Is it going to be Olsen waiting still on deck? How do you see that working out on that, what we would consider a fourth line, at least on paper?
Yeah, it looked the same. My guess is that Olofsson will be the odd man out. It looks like
Okay.
Olofsson or Robinson. Like Gergensons is cleared, and it sounds like he'll be in. I think anytime he's healthy, he's going to be in for this
Yep.
team, especially leading up to the trade deadline, right? Like he's one of the few chips that they have, and he's just one of their guys. He's got an A. He's one of their most consistent players. You know what you're going to get. So it could be a situation of Olofsson or Robinson, depending on the matchup, right? You know, depending on the type of game that you feel like you need to play, because those are two very different players. Robinson, you know, bringing more of that net front, you know, hard forechecking style, and Olofsson wasn't on either power play unit. You know, he was kind of working off on his own while the power play was going on at practice. So it leads me to believe he'll be the odd man out, but we'll see. And so other than that, you had Okposo with Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner. You had Benson with Cousins and Peterka, like we talked about, and then Middlestat, Greenway, Tuck. So still not a bad top nine when it's balanced out that way. And Okposo on the top, you know, what I guess would be considered on paper the top power play unit, even though it's not the actual top power play unit these days, is, you know, with Tage, Skinner, Dahlin, and
Cousins.
Cousins on the other side. So, which I actually like, by the way.
Is it more bumper? Are they going back to like a bumper with Okposo? Because when I look at those,
by the front of the net, and we talked about this a little bit, that their inability to get to the net and score from in front, and it feels like Kyle Okposo, who's having quietly a decent season, is one of the few players that you can count on to just do things the right way in that regard and bring just a little bit of hustle, a little bit of energy, a little bit of tenacity, which I feel like is what's lacking on the power play. This urgency, this, you know, everything's kind of just around the perimeter, and there's, you know, you can throw out the terms, the shot mentality, you know, these things that are just lacking from a power play that is tied right now with Sam Reinhart in power play goals. Yeah. Sam Reinhart has 20 goals, and the Sabres have 20 goals on the power play. Not good.
Former bust Sam Reinhart. Sam Reinhart was a bust. I don't know if you know this, but former bust Sam Reinhart. He certainly has busted out on that power play, no doubt. I don't even, what's his, so how many goals is it? Do you have it up?
20.
Actually, 20. That's crazy.
20 on the power play for the Sabres and 20 on the power play for Sam Reinhart. The Sabres are also tied for the league lead, having allowed 8 shorthanded goals. Jesus. So they are, they have the worst expected goals for percentage on the power play this season at 71%. So it's been a tough go. It's been a tough go. Okay. And so, yeah, a little bit of shuffle in there and adding a guy that's got a little bit of jam, I'm okay with it.
That was my thought when I saw the power play lines that were tweeted today. You're seeing how the even strength lines are laid out. Again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about on Friday when we were together. Like losing Quinn, it creates this huge gap at wing, but it also creates this issue on the power play. When I saw Okposo there, I kind of get it, because I think you explained it properly. I think that's the only rational explanation. Because when you have Olofsson there, like when you lose a shooter like Quinn, like when you have Olofsson on the on-deck circle that, you know, probably just dying to get back in the lineup, I would put him on the power play in this instance when you're missing Jack Quinn. It's very logical for many of the same reasons that we talked about on Friday. Get him back in, get him playing, showcase him even more. Maybe he gets a little shine, like a little value if he can pop a couple in on the power play, and the league says, oh yeah, I forgot that guy can rip it. We haven't seen him in a while. But at the same time, for everything you described, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. You know, the games that we said this before, you know, sometimes the games that you don't think they have a chance in, those are the ones that they show up for. There was a game earlier in the season against Ottawa where I think the whole world thought they were going to lose. The Vegas odds makers certainly did, and they came out and just kind of dominated that game. We talked about it in LA, the game that got me drinks that I've yet to collect on from the chat. And I see those chatters in here. I haven't lost track of that. I see Steven Cantor, and I'm gonna put Cummings into that bucket too, of a guy, even if he didn't agree to it. But those are the games that they win. So, what do you think tomorrow? Like Dallas coming in, the redemption, I think, should matter to those guys because it's the same thought. Like you were talking about injuries this year, or maybe not the factor that a lot of people think they might be in the Sabres point total this year. But it's like, I don't know, it's the same group as last year. They were healthy and they were better last year. It's the same group this year. They're dinged up at key spots in the lineup. I think it's relevant.
It's relevant, 100% relevant. I think where I hesitate to write off an entire season. I think
Yes, I agree with that.
my bigger point is it's 100% relevant to the context of how they performed and how they've gotten to where they've gotten. 100%. Is it a valid excuse for regressing? I think it's not, because I think if you sat there at the end of last season, 1 point out, and assessed the whole thing and thought, boy, the injuries, we were pretty fortunate, right? The injuries, didn't really hit us at the wrong spots at the wrong time. Tuck got hurt, Tage got hurt a little bit, but they were able to play through it. Darlene played through what he had. Overall, a pretty healthy group. I think to go into the following season knowing that you're already missing Jack Quinn, so already the injury luck is not in your favor, and you don't do anything to backstop that spot with him out of the lineup, knowing he's going to miss at least 30 games, right? And that's what he missed, I think, 32. To not reinforce that, you lose the excuse at that point, right? Like, it's not bad luck. You knew. I mean, it's bad luck, I guess, but you knew. It happened in the summer. It didn't happen on opening night. It's not some foreseen circumstance. And then
it's an Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's not that's the Jets had the excuse, right? That's why all those guys still have their jobs. And I'm not saying that, we don't need to get into the Granato discussion or anything like that, or Kevin Adams for that matter. But it's more so, to me, forecasting to the future, right? Looking ahead and assessing what needs to be done. I think if you write off this season just because of injuries, it almost validates the front office thinking, just run it back. If the guys get healthy and keep internal improvement, there's a lack of urgency to that line of thinking. And the other part of it, Chris, for me, and Don Granato brought this up the last couple of days, and I just didn't love the framing of, he thinks now they're in a better position to handle these injuries than they were when they happened early in the season. Psychologically, guys are better equipped to handle it. The psyche's better. And all I could think was, man, like, what does it say about the team that a couple guys go down and they aren't ready? Who's that on? Is that, a reflection of the front office?
Yeah.
Not preparing them? Is that a reflection on the coaching staff not preparing them? Is that a reflection on the type of guys in the room, that there's a kind of a letdown because Tage is going to miss a couple weeks, or because Tuck pulls his hamstring? Like, the whole collective of it, to me, just feels a little bit, to your point, it's valid. It's part of the context. It's a legitimate reason why their points have dipped. Their points have dipped too far, I think, for the balance of the injuries.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, I threw it out there earlier, maybe a month ago or so, just saying, what do you think? Or, because the injuries have been, I would say, to significant parts on the team, but you can't put it all on that. Maybe the flaw wasn't necessarily replacing Quinn when he went down. It wasn't budgeting for having other injuries that come with having a hockey season. Maybe not realizing that they got incredibly lucky last year on the injury front. Maybe that was the flaw, because they didn't have to go out there and maybe sign, a top six forward. Because number one, they don't grow on trees, right? Like, they're not easy to come by. Maybe at the end of the day, like, I'd love to, it's going to come up, I think, at the end of the season press conference, just asking that question about, looking back, do you wish you had pursued more depth? Or was the answer, were they thinking that Matthew Savoy legitimately was going to come in? Because that was a kick in the nuts that happened on like September 20th. That, you know what I mean? Like, did they really think? I think they did. I
It's
think that's the only
interesting
explanation. Yeah.
because I think that's another layer to where the excuse falls flat for me is not just to your point, replacing Jack Quinn 1 for 1 was never really entering my brain because, like you said, not an easy player to replace. Top 6 forwards don't grow on trees, and the money contract it would require to get that guy in free agency to then halfway through the season need to bump him down the lineup and be saddled with the
Because you
whole
were
thing.
plugging the hole for like 3 months, right?
Exactly. You weren't
Yes,
plugging it for
yes.
the duration. This wasn't a guy that left your team. So, but the second point there to reinforce the forward group with more depth, I think was a miss, but the miss to me was that they didn't properly evaluate what they had, right? Because think of who they maybe were counting on. Maybe they were counting on Yuri Kulik being ready,
19 years old.
or Isak Rosen being ready. Maybe they were counting on Matt Savoy being ready. Again, 19 years
19
old.
years old.
And the problem, if they were counting on Matt Savoy to be ready, and part of why I was a little frustrated with the Matt Savoy situation in general is that he got 3 minutes and 55 seconds of ice time and then got sent back to junior.
Yeah.
If they thought he was that close to being ready and then he misses some time with an injury and that's it, I understand training camp and preseason is very important and can be a huge growth opportunity for young players, especially in that age range. But if you thought he was close, I think you give him more than 3 minutes and 55 seconds of ice
Oh,
time.
and by the way, when they had them up here, when they sent him back, they had Bryson still on the roster. They had 3 goalies on the roster. They had other moves they could have made, but I'm not. This isn't a campaign that they should have kept Savoy up. But at the same time, they could have maybe, if they were pinning a hope on replacing a Quinn dynamic in the lineup with Savoy, they should have kept him around longer when he got
Yeah.
healthy.
Or
Yeah.
or one of the other guys, but again, that was banking on either a 19 or a 20-year-old, whether it was Roseanne Kulik or Savoy.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
craziness.
having Tyson Jost be the guy that you're leaning on as your, depth guy that can jump in and out of the lineup ended up being a miss. They're using a roster spot on Victor Olofsson, who they couldn't get rid of, and not eager to play him, clearly. So then you lose one of the big injuries, one of probably the under the radar injuries that exposes the problem that we're talking about is Zemgus Girgensons missing 18 games because you lose him and then you're kind of lost, right? You're going and you get Eric Robinson, who's been fine, but because Tyson Jost is not not the answer, he's in the AHL right now. You brought him back for $2 million. He's in the AHL. And no effort, no competition from the outside. No competition, I think, is what bothered me more than anything about it is that no, guy signed to a camp tryout, right? No veteran brought in to shake things up. Just let them run it back. Just let them, and then you get a couple injuries and it's like a house of cards. The whole thing falls apart. One guy's out at one time, the whole thing can't fall apart. That's a reflection on either how the team is built, the type of guys that are in there, or the coaching, being able to adjust with guys in and out of the lineup. And it's why I wrote what I wrote today about the injuries, just to point out, just to freeze this moment in time, right? Because they're 10 points out of a playoff spot right now. It's not like they're tied for the wild card and the Quinn and Samuelsson injuries are going to doom their chances. They're 10 points out.
They were,
and they're right at the middle of injury luck. It could be a lot worse. There's teams that have worse that are in better positions, and it could be a lot better. But just to take a pause before we get to the end of the season, and people say, "Well, Quinn was out, and Samuelsson was out." It's like, no, because right now they're 10 points out. It's not as if they've gotten themselves into a good position before these injuries, and that's where you can poke holes. Hindsight's 2020. There were clearly some missteps made, and none of it, I think, dooms them long term and what they're building, and why people should still be fairly optimistic about the foundation they've laid. But I think there need to be some serious lessons learned about what went wrong with this team, and you don't learn lessons if you just use injuries as one of the main.
No, you're right.
Excuses.
100%. Yeah. I wanted to push back on it a little bit just because you and I have talked, like the biggest difference between this year and last year clearly is the power play. I'd like to know, like, how have the injuries contributed to the power play? I think that's kind of the answer to the question, right? Because no, I'm with you. I just want to push back on it a little bit because the guys that like they didn't have the depth. So when you lose high caliber players, obviously your chances of winning go down. But no, I think you're right. I think you're right on the money in terms of saying, yeah, lesson learned. But at the same time, there is a section of the Sabres fan base that knew they didn't have the depth, there's a chance that they were going to be overly reliant on very young players. And hindsight is always 2020, but that's sports talk. That's what we talk about. You know what I mean? So teams take gambles and you win some
And
and you lose some. I lost my gamble, by the way, over
Kulik did
on
not
Friday.
score.
Kulik did not score. He's now 11 games. So I'm 1-on-1, but trying to bet the chat, but
But there
no
was
one took
no
that bet. So
Yeah, there
they
was
still won
nobody
the
in the
game.
chat to take that bet, so you lucked out. You're still sitting in the green. I certainly wasn't gonna take the bet. I was like, I don't feel like betting against Kulik to score is a good bet, but I'm not betting against Bake Stradamus over there with the especially nobody watches more AHL hockey than this guy. So I was steering clear. Nobody in the chat jumped in.
No
So
one wins every bet. No one wins every bet. Okay. So it's good to see that I'm human. But yeah, at the same time, I know Kulik, who scores like almost a goal a game at the AHL, like, ooh, whoa, yeah. Real crazy bet there, Baker. Guy hasn't scored in 9 games.
he
You
almost had
forecast
one.
him to score a goal. He did. It was 7:20 because I said by 7:45. I was downstairs. Here's what's crazy about that. I was downstairs. I was filling up like coffee or whatever, and I got the game on up here in the office. And Don Stevens super loud, not to mention I'm hard of hearing anyway, so I probably have the thing turned up to 120. But he called it like it was in. He's like, Yuri Kulik scores his first goal back from World Juniors. Blah, blah. I'm like, oh, I was like, I'm going to grab my phone, tweet, tuck some shit. And I'm glad that I
You
didn't.
texted
Because I
me,
came back. I texted you.
and
Yeah,
I
because I was
wasn't watching.
downstairs. I know. I come back up and I'm like, oh, I go false alarm.
Yeah.
And then when you watch the replay, like it wasn't even close.
Right.
It wasn't even
It
close,
wasn't.
man.
I was
So,
like, I mean,
I'm like,
he got robbed a little bit, but it was,
yeah.
it didn't look in. That's for sure.
Oh man. Let's hit the chat real quick, shall we? Well, before we go to the chat, hey, hit the like button, people. Before we go to the chat, is Devon Levi going to come up?
He's
What are they going to do with the goaltending?
Not right now. So it's interesting. You said at the top that they're going to need a second goalie, and they will at some point, but they don't have back-to-backs. So UPL could play a lot of these games.
Do you think he's going to play 11 games in 20 days, though?
I don't think he's going to play 11 in 20 days, but he could play a lot.
He might play 10.
Right. You don't really need, if he doesn't wear down, you don't need another goalie. And I think the main thing, I asked Granato what the plan was with Levi, and he sort of danced around it, but basically said circumstances would need to change in order for him to be back. And I think the big circumstance was that, Luukkonen's the clear number one, and he's going to get most of the games, was essentially my read on it. And if you need a backup at some point, you plug Comrie in and don't disrupt the rhythm that Levi could get by playing more consistently in the AHL. Now, would they pull him up? We've talked about how the back and forth is probably not the best thing. Would they pull him up, because there's an opportunity for a spot start? I don't know if it doesn't seem like they would. So Luukkonen might play a bunch of games. Another opportunity to see, like, is Luukkonen a legit starting NHL goalie for more than a month, right? We've seen him do it for a month at a time. So is it going to be, that's an important question to answer heading into the offseason. He's an RFA. He needs a new deal. And, what's that going to look like? I think these next couple of months could tell the story. It would be a great development for them if he can carry this through and, get, a real good hot streak going and go into the offseason feeling like you have a legit experienced number one. I think that would be huge.
If so yesterday's press availability, Granato referred to Luukkonen as the clear number one. Is that the first time all season that those words came out of his mouth? Because I know he's kind of talked about it a little bit, like a roundabout, but never spoken an absolute
He's
like he
more
did
so,
when he said
I
that.
feel like he's more so said in the past that, like, at this moment, right? Or right now, You were kind of almost making it more sound like Luukkonen was the hot hand. But you're right. On
Yeah.
Sunday, that was when I asked about Levi, when he said he is, Luukkonen is clearly the number one. Like, he's our number one goalie. And it feels that way too in the room, and talking to guys,
I just
like,
felt like
they
his
know.
tone changed when he
Yeah.
answered that.
And I think I've brought this up.
49 games into the season,
Yeah.
he finally could anoint someone a number one.
Well, that was the other thing he brought up in that answer, was that when they had 3, they didn't have a number one. And so that's why, they were, again, going back to the evaluating what you have, indecision, you know, it all started, it's up and down the roster, and it started, you know, into the summer. It started actually at the end of last season, because coming into the season, it felt like Luukkonen was third in the pecking order. He was the third
Yeah.
goalie to get a start. At the end of last season, he went, what, one game in the last 11 or 12, to the point where Kevin Adams felt like he needed to have him over his house for, just to make sure everything was good. I mean, because he seemed not pleased with not seeing the ice, because Devon Levi was playing well. He was the hot ticket. People were excited to come to the arena to see him. And, that was a misevaluation heading into this season of where the goalies all stood. And, so now they're getting great goaltending. And yeah, Don Granato says he's the number one. So we'll see how it, I think Luukkonen is much better when he's in a comfortable position. He needed to scratch and claw. Everybody needs to compete and all that, but mentally, he's in a good place right now. So I think he's going to get a lot of games, and I'm curious to see how he handles it, because that's a big piece, right? What does the goalie situation look like next year?
Yeah,
And,
it's funny because a couple weeks ago I was saying you can run one into the ground when Luukkonen was like emerging. I was kind of joking, but they might end up running him into the ground in a good way. Like, if there's going to ride him, I want to see it. I don't, if he's the best goaltending option that you have, go for it. There's just
better
a lot
than
of games coming
shuttling
up
the
in
other
this.
guys
Yeah.
back and forth, right?
I
It's better,
agree.
like,
Yeah.
let Devon Levi find a little bit of a rhythm in Rochester. Let Eric Comrie be in one place. He's got a little one at home, and all that. Like, I just feel like the back and forth, it's not, throw aside the Comrie situation if you're not the type of person who thinks it matters what's going on off the ice. For Devon Levi, I don't think it's the best thing to be, oh, there's an opportunity for a spot start, take the drive down the 90 and play in the NHL. Like,
Yeah.
be present with the Amherst, be part of the team for a little while, and feel what it's like, and feel what it's like to carry a team. All those things that I think could, and they're in a competitive spot,
I think he's
and
going to be their playoff goalie.
right. So that, I think, matters. And if there's an opportunity, if Comrie's not up to it, if Luukkonen starts to slip, if there's an injury, by all means, I'm not saying shut the door on Devon Levi coming back to the NHL, but it's okay to let him just hang out there for a little while, out of the spotlight, and do his thing, and develop.
But maybe get a room at that Sheridan in Batavia. It's like right between
Little
Buffalo
halfway
and that, just in
spot.
case. Yeah, it's kind of, okay, maybe. All right, we'll see what happens. No, I wanted to ask about that because we're coming out of the break and he went down right when the break started. But I think though, at long run, yeah, with Levi, and I've kind of flip flopped on this. In the beginning of the season, I was like, keep him up here, let him play, he'll figure it out. Now, 10 points out of a spot, you got a guy that's kind of running, I would say, warm to hot in Luukkonen. He's playing well. He's seeing the puck. He just looks confident when he's in net. Play him as much as you can. And yeah, you can kind of check 2 boxes in the goaltending position if you can get Levi playing regularly while UPL's running pretty warm. So I like it. I like it. And if they keep him down there, great. Because I mentioned somewhere, may have been that Sabres Live thing that I did last week or whatever, is saying if they're serious about getting a winning tradition and winning some playoff series and going as far as you can, get Levi in net down there. He hasn't, his stats aren't indicating he's played pretty well. So there's some goals though that he wants back. I think it's going to keep him a little hungry too. Let's
Which
hit the
is not a
chat.
bad thing.
No, I'm all about it. Just keeping guys hungry down there. That's what we were kind of talking about with Kulik and Rosane too. You know, you don't need to make a knee jerk and call them up. Keep them hungry, keep the guys down. It's always a good thing. So hit the chat here. What's led to Kulik and Rosane's dip in production? I think the coming out of the World Juniors, Kulik moving back out to wing just didn't help his game. Didn't have the puck as much. I think there's a little bit to that. I think that Jost dynamic, managing an AHL roster is very difficult. It's a revolving door guys. I was talking about Nikita Novikov in like a period of month. He had like 6 different defense partners because they just, they rotate guys in and out. It's the same thing with the forwards. You're constantly losing guys. There's guys going up to Buffalo, coming up from the coast. I think it's hard. I think the position change was something, but also I mentioned this, I think the last time we were together, just that mental reset, just the emotion. It's an emotional tournament, World Juniors. It's the same dip that we saw from Kulik last year coming back. He'll rebound. He's too good of a player at that level. This is Teddy again. He mentioned that he liked your question to Granado about focus. Granado's answer was pretty good too. Simply too busy and too much to focus on.
Yeah, it was a line of questioning around his job status, essentially. Mike Harrington had asked about Todd McClellan getting fired and Donnie moving up the list of longest tenured coaches, and he kind of shrugged it off. And I just followed up, because he was like, I got to stay in the moment. I can't be worried about all that. And I was like, how do you do that? Like, there's a lot of pressure, and it keeps coming up, right? He mentioned, as Teddy pointed out, that, they're too busy, too much to focus on, which is true. Day to day, he's got too much going on that if you start looking elsewhere, you're going to get, pulled underwater pretty fast. But I do wonder, when you have 8 days off the way that they did, right? Or however long it was, a week off, and you're, sitting in the sun somewhere thinking, reading, if you let your eyes wander, then, that would be the time that you would do it. And it's not easy. I still remember, and I think about this a lot, is that when Don Granato signed that contract extension, which still has not kicked in, he mentioned that day multiple times how the extension wasn't job security. Like, I think more than a lot of coach. I mean, he's been around. He's a rookie head coach, or not a rookie head coach, but a first-time NHL head coach. This is his first gig in that spot at the NHL level, but he's a long-time hockey guy, understands the lack of job security in the profession. So he didn't necessarily feel like he was getting, some sort of comfort from that extension other than the financial piece of it. So this is not a guy that is complacent by any means, and that is not unaware of the pressures that he faces, but I think, seems better, in a better headspace now than he was at times in the first half.
Interesting. Yeah, I listened to that. I thought that was interesting back and forth on that topic. I didn't expect him to say, yeah, guy. But he did say it's professional sports. I think guys get fired. I think that was like the only kind of cliche thing. He actually gave an honest answer to the question. I thought it was good. I like this question from Dan Meyer. I'm gonna throw it up. This is a Southtown's All-Star. Really, Erie County All-Star citizen, I would say, Dan Meyer. If Kyle Okposo gets traded between now and the NHL trade deadline, who do you both think would become the interim team captain to finish out the 23-24 regular season? Matthew, I'll let you go first.
I almost feel like they wouldn't have one. And if they did, it would be Darlene, would be my guess. I still think
I don't think they would put a C on anyone if they have to, they rotate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darlene is still, I think, the betting favorite to be the next captain. When
they would keep it in the leadership group, though. So the guys that have A's right now, and I think we saw when
they'd probably add an A for Alex Tuck, is what they would.
Well,
do.
that's what I was going to say. Tuck would
A's
up into that leadership group, but whoever's in the present leadership group would likely maybe on a rotating basis or go have a home and away, something like that. We've seen that in the past. Stephen Cantor says, "I got you for your tequila," and hopefully Brian Cummings will oblige. I'll have to catch up on the chat. But yeah, we should work our way towards some kind of, I have something to talk to you about. I have a cool idea to talk to you about offline. Maybe we talk about it on. Remind me. buzz me on that. Yeah, more to come, Stephen Cantor, on how I'm going to collect my canteen full of tequila. Matthew, as always, if you see something that's tickling your fancy, by all
Ryan
means,
Cummings
throw it out.
is good for the bet as well here. He is acknowledging his debt, which is good.
Yeah. Cummings, I think, also is a visits the Tim Graham Make-A-Wish event that we have sometimes at Elmo's. Is that right, Cummings? We can always clang some glasses together there as well. And maybe we can drag Stephen Cantor out and whoever else is making bets that I don't even know about. Have to win. This is Papa Duke, another old school Sabres aficionado. Have to win or get loser points equivalent to 24 wins in 33 games to hit 96 points. So again, let me rephrase that. So win or get a loser point equivalent to 24 wins in 33 games to hit 96 points. Thanks for doing that math. I was thinking about that and I didn't get there. They have to produce the same points in the last 33 as they did in the first 49.
Basically, they need to play at a points percentage pace that only Boston and Vancouver have played with to this point in the season. So
you're saying there's a chance.
Be one of the two best teams in the league the rest of the way. You're still in it. It's the weird thing about the math with the NHL playoffs. As I learned last year, my first season on the beat and kind of being in the day-to-day, of an NHL playoff race, thinking, man, they're right there. They're only 6 points out. But the math is the math for a reason, because you're chasing teams and most teams are playing around 500 hockey, and it's tough to make up ground. And there's a lot of teams they have to leapfrog. Connor Clifton, every time I've visited his locker and we've had talks about this group, he keeps talking about get back to 500 before anything. Just get back to 500. Like, that's the baseline, and they're one game below right now.
A win tomorrow does it.
So, before you start thinking about playoffs or the ground you make up, just get back to 500. It's a little bit of an easier mental picture to think about things, and they're close.
Yeah, that's a good point. James Campbell says, sorry, I'm late. James, that's not your fault. We didn't tell you that we were coming, but appreciate the apology. Next time, make it on time. Sorry, I'm late. Olofsson, same number of goals as Benson, but Benson plays with first and third, now second lines. Olofsson plays with Krebs and Gergensons when not eating popcorn. So my take on that, though, is Benson's game, forget the goals and assists that are on the sheet, right? His game is built to play with really good hockey players and his compete level. And it's not handing him something that he hasn't earned. I think he's earned the right to fill that Quinn slot on the Cousins-Peterka line. He earned the look to go up and play with Thompson and who was it? Tuck for a little bit, right? I think he's earned it. I think his game is kind of built for that. Olofsson, just to me, nothing against him. He does some good things. He's been noticeable off the puck at times this season, but he doesn't have the same effect on the lineup or his line mates to me. Matthew, any comments on James's comment, including his apology for being late?
Apology accepted. I understand there. I've gotten a few questions about this, about Benson. I think there's some people starting to notice the lack of, points from Benson and wondering why he continues to get all this opportunity. And I'm with you in that there's not been many moments or many games this season where I've been underwhelmed by Benson and what he's doing and what he's bringing to the lineup. However, I do appreciate James's point about Victor Olofsson, because I have felt I don't know, it's weird to say I feel bad for a guy making $4.75 million, but I feel bad about the situation Victor Olofsson's been in this year, because it feels like at no point has he gotten an opportunity for any sort of extended period. And this was a guy. The funny thing about the Victor Olofsson conundrum, right? Where is this team struggling? On the power play, scoring goals. The offense has regressed. The power play is one of the worst in the league. This guy had 28 goals last year.
Dude, that's my whole point about mentioning him earlier. Yeah, it's like if you're going to put him in just to play on the power play.
Also, kind of a high quality human being Guy that has
Yeah.
really kept his head down in a difficult situation where he was scratched at the end of last year, and it almost seems like there was an overcorrection on the, like, yes, he's not that great away from the puck, and his 5-on-5 game was lacking at times last year, but it felt like it went beyond. It's gone beyond to the point where I don't know, internally maybe they feel this way, but, the fan base had painted this picture of a guy that was not a good hockey player. And he scored 28 goals last year, and he was really good on the power play, and maybe that gives you a little bit of a different look where it's a threat opposite Tage Thompson, so teams aren't cheating so much to Tage Thompson. I don't know, but the power play is so bad that you would think that would be one of the things that would be worth trying a little bit more. But for whatever reason, it was like they've made up their mind about Victor Olofsson, what he is, who he is, where he fits into the picture short and long term, and it's nowhere in an important role. And that has made it difficult for Victor Olofsson because this is a guy that I think was more than open to a trade in the offseason, didn't get one because they couldn't find a partner because of the money,
Yeah.
but then didn't get a chance to play his way into showing teams that. And I don't know, it's been a weird situation. And now with the injuries, in theory, there would be a chance to bump him up, but
I think he'll get a look at some point. He'll get in the lineup. Maybe they'll
it's the
pop him in on the
sporadic
power play.
looks though, right? That's what he's had all
Yeah.
year. It feels like he's had, like, sporadic looks, and a guy like that, like, wants to get into a shooting rhythm, wants to feel the puck and get confidence, and it doesn't feel like he's had a chance to do that at all this season. So, not making excuses for the guy, but it's also, to me, weird asset management because you want to get something for the guy, but you're not showing teams what he is, and
You
you're
know,
telling teams
ear
what you think of him when you're scratching him as often as they do.
earlier in the season, maybe it was a month and a half ago, I'd have to go back and look when Rosane was up. We talked about how you were seeing some inspired performances from Olofsson. Rosane Stahl was next to him. Maybe he had that mentorship. Remember talking about that? I'd be curious to see. We talk about patterns sometimes with players. Say Rosane, some point here in the last, what are we at? Two plus months left in the season, gets his call. He'll be up. He'll get another game or two at the end of the season for sure. Kind of prep him, get the juices flowing against the pace of the NHL before he goes back for the playoff run with the Amerks to see if like Olofsson pops. The problem is it might only be for a couple of games. But that's one of those things too. If Olofsson's here past the trade deadline, he finishes out the year here, that's on the end of season press conference agenda, right? It's like, you guys kept him here. You didn't move him. You didn't use him. What the hell? Like there's kind of, trust me, I'm not telling, you got enough people telling you how to do your job and what questions to ask. I get it, but that's not me. I'm just saying, I'm sure it's going to come up. If not by you, by someone else. On the injury front, and we had talked about this, Brian Cummings mentions, I have Tuck's game log up on Hockey Reference. 9-10 games before he grabbed his hammy versus Nashville, he was over 20 minutes, 25 minutes twice, 22 minutes a night before he went down. You remember we had talked about that. He was getting overused, concerns about tread on the tire, but that was a chunk of games that he missed there. And that cost, he followed up here, Cummings did, and said that cost him 10 days. I don't know how many games he missed, but yeah, that was in December, right? That was early December, I want to say.
He's missed 7 games total, and it's a valid point too about injuries, is that it's always hard in sports. I feel like this was a thing with the Bills for a while. In the last couple of years, it has caught up. But I see the opposite with the Sabres. As fans, I feel like there's a tendency to want to assign credit for things that go well, right? And for a while with the Bills, it was they built this brand new fancy sports performance center, state of the art, one of the best in the league, and they weren't getting injured, right? And it was like, look at that, like, that's why,
The
they
cryogenic chamber.
right,
That they
exactly.
have. Yeah.
They invested and they nailed it. And then the last couple of years, it's been like guys are dropping like flies. I mean, it's a violent game, football. Same with hockey. Now I see there is, this sentiment. But I do think, to Brian Cummings' point, like, you also have to watch some of that stuff in terms of, it's just so hard to parse, right? Whether it's like the training staff, are they rushing guys back too soon, but that is a concrete example of, and we talked about it, like, man, this guy's getting a lot of minutes. He's a big dude. He's had injury problems, and boom, He gets a
It was like the next
legitimate
game.
he gets a legitimate
Yeah.
overuse injury, right? Like that is an overuse injury. I think it's harder in hockey too for me to kind of find the meaning or assign credit or blame on injuries. A lot of it is luck, but a lot of it in hockey is hidden too. Football, everything's on the injury report for the most part. And so it's like, okay, this guy was limited in practice, this and this. There may be guys, they have 147 man games lost this year. There's guys that I'm sure have played injured and we have no idea about it. And so,
Yeah.
that's another piece to this that's tricky. But I think instances like the one Brian pointed out are worth mentioning when you chalk all the bad injury stuff up to luck. It's like, well, maybe if you didn't, grind this guy to bits. It was the same thing with Darlene last year, right? It's like if you had more depth on the blue line, you wouldn't need to play Darlene 25 minutes a night. And probably he doesn't wear down the way that he did late
The
in the
more,
year.
yeah, the more we talked about the Quinn thing, the more I hear you talk about it, because you've been pretty steady all season long talking about, man, not going out and kind of filling that gap in the lineup. And really, it's about losing all that depth. It's everything that we're talking about with some of these other players, Tuck feeling like he has to do more. The coaching staff maybe thinking that they need to lean on him more because they don't have the depth. It's that overuse. It's that tread on the tire thing they were talking about. No, it's a good call. I love talking injuries. Hey, Patrick Moran is in the chat, by the way. I don't know if he's still here. Sometimes I stalk Patrick Moran. I don't even know if he sees my comments because I'll pop in and send the Periscope or whatever, the Twitter lives. I'm like, get microphone stands, you cheap bastard, or whatever, you know what I mean? Because he's always there holding the microphone.
He's got a
Patrick
very good looking studio.
So Patrick is an OG, by the way, in the Buffalo, old school blog sphere, but he's a good guy. He's here commenting. Everyone on this podcast, you should be subscribed to Talking Buffalo. He talks Sabres, he talks Bills, he talks pop culture, he talks chicken wings. If you don't know Patrick Moran, you're not following his podcast, you could subscribe to him on Substack. When he's everywhere, he does a really good job promoting his podcast. He's 5 days a week, friend of the show. We're supporters of Patrick Moran, and thank you, Patrick, for stopping by.
We need to
and
have
enjoy
him.
Vacation, by the way, he's going on vacation. Enjoy your vacation.
We need to have him consult on our studio setups here and make us look a little fancier.
Oh, he's always commenting on my audio, good
He
or
looks
bad.
pretty. He's got the sharp lighting and the whole deal. It looks a little. He had Tyler Dunn on. I've still been meaning to listen to that one. It looks cozy in there. He had Tyler Dunn in the studio, and they're so he's making the most of his space. But it looks good, and I'm in the process of trying to spruce up my space. So I may need some tips from Pat. Might have to go to South Buffalo and get some pizza and wings, and get some tips from him.
I was looking at paint yesterday, by the way, so I can get rid of these urine colored walls in this house. When I bought this house, I just moved in. That's a place for my stuff. I'll get to it. I've been here, I forget how many years now, almost 10 years. I'm I haven't done a thing paint wise. I think it's time because, I do care, but maybe I'll get there. Maybe that's the summer project. You know what I mean? I watched 15 hockey games this week, and who has time to paint? But yeah, thank you, Patrick Moran, for stopping by. He wants a room in Batavia. He can sit there and bunk with Devon Levi. Stephen Cantor, wonder why Nadeau is in Jacksonville as his game is not perimeter. No, he's definitely net front guy, good in the corners, good on the boards, numbers game right now. I thought maybe it was Cedarquist getting traded. That would create an opportunity, but they just have so many guys down there. And it gets worse when you send Tyson Jones on an NHL contract down there and you have all these other guys on NHL contracts down. It just pushes a skater down to the coast. And Nadeau drew the short straw in that regard. I think I reached the bottom here. I got one for you. You might be better equipped to answer Blake Becker's question on Quinn and Peterka. Do you risk bridging Peterka and Quinn this offseason? What realistically would a long-term contract look like for these two? I don't want to put you on the spot. I haven't thought about it. Have you?
I haven't gotten, it started to enter my brain, but I haven't gotten far enough down the road to look at what the projections might be. They don't have to do it this summer. They could do it this summer. As Blake points out, bridging those guys would be risky, right? But so would the long-term deal. You can't have everybody on the 7-8 year deals on these big cap. And to get them on those deals, Peterka in particular, because he's been healthy and scoring. If he keeps scoring like this, that price tag goes up to get him to commit in a world where the salary cap's going up. So, yeah, those two are on my list to start to dig into, because I believe we're going to get to a point where I'm going to be having to write in forecaster mode in the last few months of the season here. We'll see what the next month brings with the this slate of games, but a lot of my thinking is starting to go towards the off season and what moves could come, what contracts need to be taken care of, as far as building this thing, getting it to the next step. I had the Bean Pot on in the background tonight, watching future Sabre Macklin Celebrini have
You
himself a
troll.
night.
You're such a troll. You're such a troll.
Future Sabre Luke Tuck, who's completed his 4 years of college and will be a free agent.
Potentially, yeah.
Could be a
They
nice
still
little.
hold Montreal still holds the Tucky Juniors rights there for a little
For
bit.
now, he
couple more months.
he was a second round pick, 47th overall in his draft. But Alex's kid brother, I don't know if he'd want to play. I have no idea if he'd want to play in the organization, or if playing with his brother would appeal to him. I know they were excited to play together for Team USA at the World Championships, but yeah, mostly just messing around. That had that game on. Sabres pick Gavin McCarthy was out there as well in the lineup for a big game against Boston College tonight. So
he's actually had a pretty solid freshman season, McCarthy. His brother's there. His brother plays a bigger role, but there was times in the season where Gavin was actually up playing with Lane Hudson and for a couple games early in the season. And they've been mostly guarding his minutes as they got deeper into the season, but there's some potential there with Gavin McCarthy. He's going to be, he's got a little two-way look to him, but he's more defense. He's got some snarl to his game. Like when he fills out, you can see he's got the mentality. When he fills out, you can see, I think he's going to be a pretty physical, hard-nosed type of, whatever a stay-at-home is now. They're all modern two-way guys now, but he'll definitely have a defensive slant to him.
Awesome.
Anything else
opportunity
go ahead.
for him this year to play with his brother, which was somewhat unexpected. That his brother had an injury, so he came back, and to step into that situation where you get, the mentorship of, your brother, but then you've also got, like Tom Willanders on that blue line, that was in that draft last year.
All six blue liners tonight for the Terriers are draft picks of the NHL.
And you're playing in these games.
Celebrini's brother.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw the week and a half ago or whatever that BCBU played the home and home, and the atmospheres were rowdy. And then you're playing in the Bean Pot. It's been a while since both BC and BU were this good at the same time. And, so for him to be there as a freshman, soaking in this experience at that age, these big games, you don't get that everywhere. To play at the Garden and have it be packed and rabid like this. So, and you're playing with, the number one overall pick likely in the 2024 draft and Macklin Celebrini. So you've got, the fanfare that comes with that. You're going to get a potential run in the national tournament.
Eyes on him.
And so definitely a good experience. And he looks, like you said, he kind of has a mature look to him already. And he just needs to physically get there to really see what he can become. But for Kevin Adams' old neighbor there, he's looking like he could be something. Him and Sturbach, a couple nice blue liners growing. I mean, it's going to take a while to get them to the NHL, but a little reason for hope, right?
What do you know about Boston hockey? I mentioned this before, but for those that maybe weren't paying attention to the early days of this Baker Fairburn Hockey Show, Aspen, my Swissy, you know this story, right? She is from the same litter as the McCarthy family dog. Their dog Cooper is Aspen's brother. Aspen was the biggest one. There was 10 puppies in the litter. She was 10th and the biggest one. It's usually Cooper is a pretty big boy too. He was a big boy. They're getting up there. They're all getting up there now. I got her. She's 8. I'm going to start getting sad at talking about it. Hopefully she makes it to, 20. Not happening, but she's getting up there in age. Anything else in the chat, Matthew? We're at an hour. I lied to you clearly. I'm like, well, I'll keep you for like 35, maybe 45 minutes, nothing crazy. But as usual,
We're
we just
showing
kind of
a
wrapping.
we're showing a clear inability to execute the 35 to 40-minute podcast. We just can't do it. We just always we always have more to talk about. The chat keeps us. It's magnetic. Keeps us
I like the
glued.
chat rolling too when they're talking to each other. Every now and then I'm scrolling through. I see them talking to each other. We're building a community here. We're building a community here. It's heavy male population. I think we have a 0% viewership females when I check our YouTube stats. So that's fine. It's fine.
So tell your lady friends about the show.
The Baker Fairburn Sausage Show. It's in full effect. Teddy's asking some prospect questions. Teddy, I'll do those in the Prospect Avenue. I will have more updates on Matteo Costantini. I led with Costantini a couple episodes ago, Teddy. If you didn't check that one out, you might want to do that. But and then Cummings talking about the old Gate Cliff, I think, was the place where the Junior B Falcons used to play. That place was awesome before the Ice Dogs played there. And then they moved to their new shindig there, or their new digs. Yeah, the chat's hopping. All right. And Mitch is excited for Prospect Talk too coming up. So I'm going to do a lot more over there on Prospect Avenue. I try to not conflate, but sometimes I get rolling and it's hard to avoid it. But usually on this show, when I start talking prospects, the numbers drop like they are right now. So I'll stop. But yeah, I always go back and look at the chat too, by the way, because it's hard for me to read it on the fly. If I see something in the live chat that I want to address, I'll put it in the comment section below this video once we are done going live. I'm good, Matthew. I'm excited to kind of get some NHL hockey back. Sabres NHL hockey back tomorrow. Dallas again. Are they going to put up 10 on the Sabres again, or we think they're going to keep it under 10 this time?
I'll take the under. You'll take the under.
All right.
But we'll see.
Cool.
They got some talent over there. It is a nice game to come back from the break, where always fun to walk into the rink on a day when there's a team like Dallas and, some of the best players in the league, and a team that comes to Buffalo once a year. So it's kind of like Vancouver a few weeks ago, where you're like, all right, you see one of the better teams in the NHL, some of the best players, and that's a fun night to come to work.
Well, you enjoy the game, Matthew. I'm glad we got to do this tonight, because otherwise I was going to be crawling up your pant leg to try to do post-game one tomorrow. And I don't want to put you on a scramble. I don't want you to lug everything around. So now you can just take your laptop, your little professional reporter's notebook, and your backpack, and you can, have a little less luggage to carry in to the arena tomorrow. I think that's it. I'm going to shut this baby down. I'm going to call it a night here, at least live on this feed. As always, everyone in the chat, you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming over on zero notice. Again, on zero notice, but it's always great to see the names, some familiar names and faces and avatars in the chat. Mitch, we love our Mitch. Mitch was representing strong in the chat tonight. We will be back again. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of games compressed. I'm going to try to grab Matthew as much as possible so we can do this with greater frequency here in the second half, or whatever it is here, post All-Star break, stretch run, maybe to the playoffs. We'll see. Matthew's already writing he's already got his offseason agenda. I'm sitting there saying in the back of my mind, yeah, what if they win 10 out of 12? Then what, kid? But we'll be back again very soon. For Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic, for the production crew, enjoying a very nice, comfortable, almost 40-degree day, but now it's 27. I'm Chris Baker at Sabres Prospects. Thanks as always for coming back, and we'll see you next time.